this first module in the Value Transformation Risk Management online class. There are a number of other modules that will walk you through risk management and the associated processes included in this class. We will be covering these topics today as we set the groundwork for understanding project risk management. We will provide an overview of risk and probability and dependencies, as well as severity. We will also review the nature of prediction in the early phases of the project, as well as the risks of project over time. Finally, we will talk about risk management as a system. Think back to a time in your work life when you thought perhaps something would go wrong but took no action. What happened? How many times has something derailed your work or your project, and when the derailing event occurred you thought, I should have thought of that? In general, in business, the greater the reward, the more willing we are to take the chance or risk. That is up to a point. At some risk level, we may not take the chance as the risk is too great. Risk is uncertainty. In project management parlance, risk is the measure of potential inability to achieve the project objectives. However, that is a large continuum. For example, we may not achieve the project objectives, and that will come with some perceived natural damage to our company. We can also achieve our project objectives, deliver the product, but the product is dangerous to the customer or consumer, so we have just encountered another risk as a result of our taking on the project. A discussion of risk includes a number of perspectives around what we know and what we do not know. Known refers to those things we know about that present risk. We have historical data and experience that informs our judgment on these areas of the project. Known unknowns are things that we do not know, but we know we do not know those things. We know enough that we can ask questions and even perhaps run experiments around the topic. We know we can seek subject matter experts since we do not know much about this topic or area. It is incumbent upon us to ask questions until we understand this enough to understand the associated risks. Unknown unknowns are much worse. We do not know anything. We have no idea of the questions we should be asking, the talent we may require, and the things we should be learning to mitigate the risks in this category. There are two dimensions to risk. Those are probability and severity. Probability, or chance, is the mathematical or statistical portion of the situation. If we are drawing the shortest straw and there are 4 other straws, we have a 1 chance in 5 of picking the shortest straw. That is the same as 20% probability of picking that straw. Without historical data or a large enough population, probability is difficult to determine, especially in the realm of project management. Severity is a level of personal or organizational discomfort that will be felt as a consequence of the probability coming to pass. Not all risks are the same. We cannot shy away from everything that can go wrong because some of those things that can go wrong really have little or no negative consequence. When we are discussing probability, we are talking about statistics. We are talking about the chances of certain event will occur or not. The probability of occurrence applies both to those items we wish to happen and to those items we do not wish to happen. Very little is absolutely certain or 100% probable. Ascertaining the probability of an event can be difficult if we do not have historical data from which to work. Missing that historical information, we rely upon professional judgment. However, each action and objective the project has come with some associated probability. Cascading activities or objectives with defined probability are multiplied together to determine the probability of both occurring. For example, the odds of flipping a coin twice and both times coming up heads would be 50% times 50% or 25%. If we consider this histogram, we can see the probability of anything happening on day 1 or 2 is low, as we have at no time in our historical record seen that happen. This brings us to an interesting observation when it comes to project schedule and task dependency. There are 2 connected events or tasks, task 1 and task 2. Task 1 is 90% probable of success, and task 2 is 80% probable. Both of these are respectable probabilities, that is to say, that each of these are not too far from certain and our chances are good individually. Let's take a look at what happens with the overall probability with these connected tasks. The probability that both tasks will succeed is a lowly 72%. When we push our schedules that have no slack, you can already predict the outcome. There is a 28% probability that these two elements will end in some form of failure. That is only considering two depending tasks. As the number of depending tasks go up, the resulting probability of success is the multiplication of each of those task probabilities. We see that the probability of success of both depending tasks is 72%. That is not the end of it. To go a little further and not scare people too bad regarding probability and dependencies, let us look at it differently. There's a 2% probability that both tasks or events will fail. If we can accept any one task being okay, then the combination of tasks that we may find acceptable could be 98%. That includes the two successes and alternative of any one of the tasks being a success or failure. Severity of the risk are the implications should the risk come to bear. A blemish on the paint of a car is a risk, but it likely harms nobody. To be sure, the company may have to spend money to fix. Consider what happens if the brakes have a problem that will not stop the car. This failure is much more severe, as this can cause great harm to the driver, other drivers, and pedestrians. We should not treat all risks equally. We have limited time and money to spend, so we should focus the effort where it is truly required. There will be much more on this later. If we are standing at the start of the project and thinking and looking to the future at some point in time in the project phases, we will see that our ability to accurately predict becomes increasingly uncertain. That is, we cannot say definitive things about the launch. We may say we desire the launch to happen, but we do not know the sort of obstacles that we may have to surmount at this distant point in the future. We are probably able to predict the immediate, that is, the present phase, or some days or weeks into the future. The further out we attempt to predict, the more uncertainty creeps into the work, and uncertainty is risk. Another way to look at risk is from the probability and severity perspective over time. In the early phases of the project, everything has some probability or possibility of going wrong. As we successfully complete actions and objectives, the risk decreases since these successes are no longer in the realm of probability, but certain we have completed these items. So overall, or total risk tends to decrease. This is the solid line that resembles the greater than symbol, opening to the left. The other dimension is severity. As we make decisions and spend money, we put the project on a path that will preclude certain other decisions. We effectively reduce the operating area for the project or some of the actions we can take in response to trauma or risks. As this wiggle room decreases, the consequences of a risk become more severe. For example, if I select a particular concept and have already paid for tooling, then I discover there's some physical aspect that needs to be changed, then I must consider what this means for the tooling of the product. These previous decisions reduce the range and types of actions we can take to mitigate or eliminate the risks. A risk management system is required. Ultimately, our risk management system must be able to quickly and effectively provide a benefit to those executing the project plan, project manager, and the executives of the company. The system must be able to meet the demands of both outsourced risks, that is, those risks that come as a result of some external work, and operational risks. The way we work with risk must also be compliant with our present policies and practices, and we must revise the ways we work. Ultimately, we want our risk management system to be cohesive and complete. Our tools, talent, and organizational policies should not contradict but support and reinforce each other. The entire system must aggressively engage the stakeholders throughout the project lifecycle. They need to be aware of the state of the projected risks associated with the project and be able to quickly act upon that information when required. There are many things that influence our approach to risk management. If our company is making a widget that is low cost and has little monetary or safety implication, when things go wrong, we may not be so sensitive to risk. Project scope adds or subtracts to the risk. Scoped well, we reduce the risk. Poorly scoped or too large a project scope, and we add to the risk of the project. Complexity in the project and the project scope adds to the risk also. Our project plans can add or subtract our risks. Appropriate measurements and attention to what these measurements mean can help us avoid some risks or quickly start mitigating actions to reduce the impact on our project. Our organizational process assets can help us reduce risks by guaranteeing some measure of repeatability through well-developed approaches to the work that we've honed over the years of doing the work. Regulations influence how we set about doing the work. If our organization is regulated, we will need to show diligence with regard to the regulation. Knowing the regulating body is paying attention to our work will likely mean we will pay more attention to that aspect of the work. Risks break down by areas of influence as well. We will provide an overview of just a few of these. There are risks associated with the technical attributes of the project. Assumptions made on how the product can work may ultimately work out to be inaccurate, causing reworking of the design. Left unchecked, these assumptions can rear their head late in the project and cause great pain with rework. There are risks related to talent. People leave. Perhaps the team does not have certain abilities to be successful, and we may not find that out until we are well underway with the project. Human talent and motivation are not fungible. We are not interchangeable like cogs. There are risks associated with cost. The development can take longer, require more talent than expected, outsource costs go up, and any one of these of too many to count events can cause our costs to skyrocket. We may be bound by legal requirements, or perhaps something our project delivers can impact the public and bring us unwanted legal impacts. There are risks to quality of the outcome. If the product development and manufacturing project project poor quality, we can appear as a... There are risks to the quality of the outcome. If it is a product development and manufacturing project, poor quality can appear as a result of both of these areas and cost the company more than the revenue generated by the project. There can be risks associated with materials we are using, perhaps hard to acquire, or the needed material is in a volatile area of the world. Our processes can cause us grief even when we do follow them, and perhaps there will be an additional risk incurred when we deviate from our processes for some project demand. Internal and external communication can present us with risks. The more distributed the team, the more difficult it can be to keep all parts of the project synchronized. Risk management consists of a number of areas. We want to identify the things that can go wrong. We will need to analyze the impact or threat level. All risks are not created equal. Some can cause great harm and some are just nuisances. We do not want to spend time with nuisances as we allow the big risks to hit the project. Those risks that we identify for action, we will create some sort of plan to address or compensate for the fallout should the risk become an eventuality. Then we will monitor for signs that the uncertainty associated with the risk is transitioning or has transitioned to actuality. That is, it is no longer a risk. If we see these signs, we will exert our controlling actions to ensure the outcome is within the boundaries we find acceptable. Another way to look at risk management is from that prescribed in the Defense Acquisition University. The document is found in this module under DoD Risk Management. Though it is a little different, there is considerable commonality. This course is not about CMMI or process maturity. However, another perspective on risk management is that contained in the Capability Maturity Model Integration from the Software Engineering Institute. This document provides a roadmap for the maturity of an organization's process. There are 22 process areas, and risk management is one of these. Risk is in the maturity level 3 category of the 5 categories possible. Level 3 is also known as the defined level in that the organization has reached level 3, has defined processes, and works proactively to adapt or tailor the processes to the dictates of the situation of the project. There are 3 specific goals and 7 specific practices in risk management according to CMMI. Revision 1.3 of the text is in the course module. Essentially, all of the effective approaches will have a resemblance. Our detailed approach starts with our organization's attitude regarding risk. This is influenced by the industry, automotive parts, or rubber bands, for example, the amount of regulation, government or none, the amount of money at risk with the project, and a number of other things. Given these attitudes and constraints, we will identify and assess the risks. This will include response actions or alternative solutions we may wish to employ. To know when we need to deploy the response actions, we must identify trigger points or associated metrics. We will execute the project taking samples of project and product performance, many of which we have associated with our risk management. We will compare these measurements to what the project defines as acceptable or good. Those project or product attributes that are outside of the operating boundaries we desire or trending toward those outward will necessitate a response. The range of possible responses will be discussed later. Our plan will be adjusted as we continue until the project is terminated or closed. We will invoke those plans we have already developed, and if we find other risks along the way, we will create plans for those as well. In general, we have 4 approaches to risk. Avoid is to take action that will prevent the risk from ever impacting our project. Every solution has the positive and negative consequences. The key is to maximize the positive impacts and reduce the negative. We can find alternative solutions that do not come with some intrinsic risks that our present approach does. Accept is to take no action regarding the risk. We do this when the severity or the probability of the risk coming to pass are low. We may also reluctantly accept risks if we must take on the project. At any rate, we are not interested in reducing the impact or reducing or eliminating the risk. Transfer is when we assign the risk to somebody else. Your home and auto insurance is a risk transfer approach. Some say that outsourcing is a risk transfer approach. That is only partially true, as the outsourced work or project failure can still impact the entire project and our organization. That is, may still acutely feel the pains of the risks. Mitigate is when we take actions to reduce the probability or the severity. We do not eliminate the risk, but we find ways to soften the blow should the risk come to pass. Thank you.